Welcome to everyone to this webinar provided by the Eastern Suburbs Regional Group of the Order of Australia Association. When Glenys Grant started talking about Di's involvement and Model United Nations Assembly, I suspect a lot of people didn't have a clue what it was all about. And so that's part of what we're looking forward to hearing.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And thank you for inviting me to address the members of the Order of Australia Association Eastern Suburbs Regional Group. And firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the many contributions you have all made to your communities. And I'm truly in awe of each one of you because I know how much you have done, and you're very deserving of an Order of Australia medal. So I'll move on with my presentation. The topics that I'll be covering in my presentation today include an explanation of MUNA, and I'll give a brief overview of the organisation and of the UN organisation and the 4 pillars of the UN Charter. Because we are a model United Nations Assembly, it's probably a good thing to start with that we all have an overview of the UN, so we know where the MUNA fits into it. I'll go through the historical links between the UN and Rotary, the format of the District 9815 MUNA Youth Program, and a very brief overview of the model of the General Assembly procedures that we implement at MUNA, including diplomatic notes, which Glenn knows all about, voting, resolutions, and the blocks that we have, ending with a reflection of my first experience with MUNA. So to begin, the one thing that we all share is our desire to give back to our communities. And I do that through my Rotary community. My Rotary community is quite broad, and I'm a member of an online club, the Rotary Club of eLatitude 38, as I like the flexibility of the online meetings. MUNA is my main Rotary interest, and I've been chair of MUNA for the past 5 years. I've been a member of Rotary for 14 years, and during that time I've been president 5 times and secretary twice, but in 2 different clubs before joining the E-Club. All of our committee meetings for MUNA are held online, so it's a familiar space for me to work in. However, it is lovely to meet people in person, and I do enjoy that. I love a good chat, don't I, Glenn? I'm also a member of Inner Wheel, which was linked to Rotary in the past, but it's now its own organisation and is just for women. And I enjoy making new friendships, and Inner Wheel is very much focused on making new friendships with a bit of service, and I'm learning the role of secretary to broaden my skills and knowledge with that organisation. But most of all, I really enjoy my role as chair of MUNA. Thank you, Glenn, for suggesting I could be a speaker, and to Jeffrey for inviting me to your meeting. I have a confession to make. When I was not sure what to call my presentation, and the title Millennials Making an Impact is a bit narrow. I've realised that I should have called it, what is the Model United Nations Assembly? As that is the most common question I'm asked. So what is MUNA? MUNA is a one-day event, usually held in a school auditorium, designed to simulate the UN General Assembly and serve as an inter-school debating event. Students in teams of 2 form what we call a delegation and debate specific resolutions from the perspective of a randomly allocated UN member nation, and I'll go over which ones we have included in MUNA a bit later in the presentation. So when organising a model assembly, we rely on teachers to inspire their students to broaden their understanding of the global world. Since I've been involved in MUNA, in that time I've met some really amazing teachers in schools, and I hear about the impact MUNA has on students at school presentations, club presentations, and in conversations with parents and students at MUNA events. But also enabling teachers are Rotarians who support the youth program MUNA. It's a team effort. Rotarians contact the schools, they seek out interested teachers, and that can be a really challenging task. And the teachers identify keen students. Without Rotarians, teachers and students, MUNA doesn't happen. So to understand how a model UN assembly is organised, it is important to have a general overview of the UN itself. The UN is a very large organisation, much larger than depicted in the diagram, and that was the best diagram I could find for the purpose of my presentation. And there are 6 principal organs: the General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, ECOSOC, the Trusteeship Council, the International Court of Justice, and the UN Secretariat. So missing on my list is the Trusteeship Council, and I've got the International Criminal Court, so I'm sure that's all important organisation in UN. There are also specialised agencies. There's numerous programs, funds, entities and institutes with wide-ranging responsibilities related to economics, education, healthcare and other areas. So the UN is neither a superstate nor a government of governments. It doesn't have an army and it doesn't levy taxes. And it depends on the political will and the contributions of its member states to carry out its activities. In the UN, there are 193 member states, as well as 2 observer states, the Holy See and the State of Palestine. The Holy See is the jurisdiction which the Pope exercises over the Catholic Church and its worldwide institutions, just in case you were wondering. The UN officially came into existence on the 24th of October in 1945 after World War II, when nations across the world ratified the UN Charter and identifies the rights and obligations of member states. The UN Charter also established the UN's 6 principal organs that I just referred to in the diagram before. The preamble of the UN Charter describes the 4 pillars of the UN, or the aims of the UN, and these pillars are peace and security, human rights, the rule of law, and development. So the first pillar, peace and security, are no longer viewed only in terms of the absence of military conflict. The common interests of all people are seen to be affected by various factors, including poverty, hunger, environmental degradation, weak democratic institutions, and human rights violations. The second pillar is human rights, and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was a landmark achievement in world history and was adopted by the General Assembly in 1948, and it marked the first time that the rights and freedoms of individuals were described in such detail, and today it continues to affect people's lives. It is the best known and most cited human rights document in the world. The third pillar, the rule of law, is one of the core concepts at the heart of the UN's work and mission. Human rights, democracy, and the rule of law are interconnected and cannot exist without one another. And the last pillar, the fourth pillar of the UN, is development. and focuses on social progress and living standards. The importance of focusing on development is mostly visible today in efforts to eradicate extreme poverty, as outlined in the 17 goals of the Sustainable Development Goals, known as the SDGs. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, adopted by all UN member states in 2015, provides a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet now and into the future. And those three documents, we put a lot of focus on those three documents when we do our online workshop presentation before MUNA. We do it 4 weeks out from MUNA. So even just expecting students to be familiar with the Human Rights Declaration, the Sustainable Development Goals, and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, even if they just have an awareness of those three documents, it will broaden their understanding of what the issues are, the important issues globally that face everyone. So Rotary International also works towards peace, and that's a cornerstone of their mission. Rotarians believe that when people work to create peace in their communities, that change can have a global effect. There are historical links between the UN and Rotary, and we don't always get a chance to highlight that in MUNA because there's so much other stuff that we need to share with students. So Rotary and the United Nations share a history of working together towards world understanding and peace. And in 1942, Rotary clubs from 21 nations organised a conference in London, attended by ministers of education and observers, to develop ideas for advancing education, science and culture across nations. That event planted the seed for the organisation now known as the UN Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organisation, commonly called UNESCO, and I'm sure many of you have heard about UNESCO. In 1945, 49 Rotarians in 29 delegations helped to draft the UN Charter in San Francisco. Rotary became heavily engaged in supporting the United Nations during its initial years by routinely sending observers to major meetings and actively promoting the organisation in specialised Rotary publications such as the Report on the UN by Rotary International and a magazine called From Here On. 5 Rotarians have served as presidents of the UN General Assembly. And it was not until the development of the Polio Plus program in the mid-1980s that Rotary re-established its liaison with the UN system. And lastly, Rotary remains one of the most respected non-governmental organisations in the UN system. So I'm just going to talk a bit about the Rotary MUNA, and it was first held by Rotary in Winnipeg, Canada, and was introduced to Australia by the Rotary Club of Lake Cargelligo in 1980, so a fair while ago now. In our Rotary District, MUNA has been a popular youth program supported by many local Rotary clubs, and their financial support has been very important over the years. Each club needs a Rotarian to be the champion of youth programs and to promote MUNA to fellow club members. Clubs pay the registration fee for delegates, and this year the cost to register a delegation, which is 2 students that form that delegation, was set at $250. An excellent investment, I think. Recently, the two districts combined, 9810 and 9820, to become 9815. And our committee comprises of members from both districts, each with a wealth of knowledge, skills and experience in all things Muna. And that is where I met Glenn, and she's made a wonderful contribution to our committee, and I'm really grateful to you, Glenn, for the work that you do. And I'm very fortunate to lead a wonderful group of Rotarians. Planning for Muna includes communication and promotion of the event to Rotary clubs and schools via our Muna 9815 website and Facebook page and emails. We also need to organise the venue, set the budget, select resolutions to be debated, ensure Rotary youth protection policies are followed and adhered to, run an online workshop for participants 4 weeks before Muna, which I mentioned before, coordinate volunteers, very keen to draw Rotaractors into this Muna space, and they act as the diplomatic couriers, and in other positions we're mentoring members of Rotaract to be really closely involved with Muna. We seek sponsorship for various prizes. I oversee the registration process, and of course catering, because food is always important to young people. We start planning 6 months out from the event, because by the end of Muna we all need a bit of a break because we've worked so hard. Since 2011, I estimate approximately 700 students have participated in our Rotary Muna. There could be more, as I don't know how many students went through the District 9810 Muna program. Anecdotally, I know of several students who have chosen career paths in law, economics or international studies after their experiences at Muna. And recently, a past Muna participant accompanied a federal minister to the UN as an aide. So it just really, a quote that came to my mind when I heard that was from Dr. Seuss, "Oh, the places you'll go." So they do go places, I just don't know where they go. So the format of Muna offered to youth in our district has changed over the years. Prior to COVID, it was a 2-day event with opportunities for delegates to socialise, as well as debates, resolutions in the General Assembly. Now it's a 1-day event, but they can still socialise and engage in debate. And we run 4 resolutions that over the day that they engage with. So the highlights include a flag procession ceremony where delegations parade with their country's flag, and they're welcomed by the Secretary General and the current district governor. The flags used in the opening ceremony are authentic, and delegates are taught how to carry a flag respectfully. The UN song is played in the background, and students are given a lapel pin that features their country as a keepsake. And that was a lovely tradition that was done in District 9810, which we've adopted. There's a short video of 17 seconds which just captures the last part of the flag procession.
Sponsored by the Rotary Club of Leongatha and from Mary MacKillop Catholic Regional College.
So that video just gives you a little brief insight as to what was happening and where we set up our Muna this year. We have all the students in the U-shaped formation. It was very cramped, but we managed to get it set up. We haven't used that venue before. That was the Lindale Secondary College, and it was a little bit challenging, but it all worked well on the day, which is always the most important thing. So at the next part of that program is that we have a guest speaker that's invited to address the Assembly. And we've had local councillors, politicians from both sides and levels, the state and federal levels. We've had UN field workers, writers and lawyers speak on a range of global humanitarian issues to educate and inspire delegates. This year, our guest speaker was Gabrielle Williams, who's an MP for Dandenong and is a member of the Labor Party and is the current Minister for Public and Active Transport. She is a lawyer and has been an advisor to both state and federal governments. Gabrielle has also been a past MUNA participant, and she attended Mary MacKillop Catholic Regional College, where she was taught by a MUNA adjudicator who's a member of the Rotary Club of Leongatha, David Leslie. He remembers Gabrielle as being a bit of a social activist while she was at school, but she had strong leadership traits. She did a really excellent presentation, and during that presentation she had her 18-month-old son on her hip, so she was modelling all sorts of things while she was giving that presentation. This is a lovely slide. These are a photo of everyone who's involved in MUNA, all the delegates and the committee and all the volunteers who supported the day. So I said it was held at Lindale Secondary College in Dandenong. The day runs to a really strict time frame, and we start about 8 o'clock in the morning and we finish around about 6:30 at night, and we have presentations at the end of the day. District 9810 did hold MUNA in the Victorian State Parliament, and it would be fabulous to do that again. However, we would need to find at least $30,000 to cover security costs, which is really not possible given our budget limitations. Part of the prizes are 2 perpetual shields, and they are awarded together with various other prizes. The first shield is for the best overall delegation and is judged by a team of 3 or 4 adjudicators, as are all the prizes. But different people contribute to the intel for who should be awarded what prize. And I won't go into that now because we've got lots to cover yet. The second is the Peace Prize. The other is the other highly sought after prize is the People's Choice Award. The Peace Prize is awarded to the delegation which makes the best contribution to world peace, and I really think that the Peace Prize is the best to win. The advancement of world peace is considered to be demonstrated through the building of positions which allow the General Assembly to achieve the broadest possible base of support for the resolutions debated, or the broadest possible base for rejection of resolutions which hinder world peace. And the diplomatic couriers have a lot to do with that prize because they're reading the little notes that are floating around in the Assembly, and I'll talk more about that later. This year we had 28 delegations from 22 different schools, a mix of public and private, such as Box Hill High School, Wellington Secondary College, Glen Waverley Secondary College, Scoresby Secondary College, McClellan College in Frankston, Padua College in Mount Martha on the Mornington Peninsula, Frankston High School, Rosebud Secondary College, Presbyterian Ladies College and Our Lady of Sion College, both located in Box Hill, Avila College in Glen Waverley, Kingswood College in Box Hill South, Woodley College in Langwarrin South, St Paul's Anglican Grammar in Warragul, Mary MacKillop Catholic Regional College over in Leongatha, Lavalla Catholic College in Traralgon, New Haven College over on Phillip Island, Foster Secondary College, Cairo Christian College in Druin, and Flinders Christian Community College in Tyab. And of course we had Lindale Secondary College there as well, and they had 2 teams in this year. So the catchment area of the schools mirrors that of the Rotary District 9815. So you might be wondering who the winners of the best delegation were this year. They were from Glen Waverley Secondary College and represented the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. And for the second year in a row, Padua College won the Peace Prize. Last year they represented USA, and this year they represented Germany. And that past MUNA participant that I spoke about that was accompanying a federal minister across to the UN as an aide was in the winning delegation of the Peace Prize from Padua College last year. So studying arts and international law at the ANU. And the People's Choice Award was won by Woodley School and represented Libya. The team of adjudicators report back at the end of each debate and provide general feedback to the delegations on what they're doing well and areas to improve. All delegations are encouraged to participate in every debate so they can score points, and our adjudicators do a great job. What a delegate wears in the Assembly is important, and they are encouraged to wear appropriate attire to represent their country. Much thought and preparation is undertaken by delegates, and over the years I've seen some fabulous national dress worn in the Assembly. I've also seen really poor examples as well. Students are encouraged to seek out authentic national dress and advice on how to wear it to avoid what we call cultural misappropriation. That is taking or using something from another culture without giving proper recognition or respect to that culture. So we suggest to play safe that delegates wear black suits, either suit pants or skirts with a white shirt and a black jacket if they can't find something appropriate to wear. We don't encourage them to wear school blazers or school uniforms because we want it to be formal in the Assembly. So moving on to Model General Assembly procedures. There are so many procedures in the UN, we can't possibly follow all of them. So we have some key procedures that we include in our Model United Nations Assembly. So one of those, of course, is the Assembly is chaired by the Secretary General, and all speeches are made to the Secretary General rather than to the Assembly. And the Secretary General is addressed as, in our case, Mr. Secretary General, because we have Dr. Hakim Ghasib play the role of Secretary General, and he carries that role off very well, and he's been doing that for the last couple of years. Diplomatic notes. Diplomatic notes are used to communicate with delegates from other countries or the General Assembly head table, the Secretary General and the Assembly President, which is the role that I play. And I've got an example there, and these notes are taken fairly seriously by the delegates, and we prepare over 2,000 diplomatic notes, and as Glenn can verify, we go through so many diplomatic notes. They write heaps. They can be used to try and persuade delegates from other countries on the issues of the resolution, and that can be achieved by offering inducements to support their viewpoint. Sometimes lollies are included with the note to a delegation which has not yet addressed the Assembly. They can also be used to communicate with the Secretary General or the Assembly President during the debates. When a delegate wishes to send a note, they will indicate to the diplomatic couriers. They just hold the note up in their hand and they just wait for the couriers to come along and collect the note. and then pass it to the recipient. Diplomatic notes will be allowed by the Secretary-General on the following basis: that all messages are in the spirit of MUNA and are respectful, that messages are not frivolous in their nature, and that messages are collected, read, vetted, and delivered by the diplomatic couriers. It's not very often that a note is not delivered. They're generally very on point with what they're trying to achieve. So if we have a look at the diplomatic communique from the delegation of Haiti to the delegation of Brazil, I don't know whether you can read that clearly, but it says, "Hello, Brazil. Would you like to sign our SNES treaty? We are trying to keep space as neutral a place as possible. If you agree, please sign our SNES treaty, Space Needs Extra Support Treaty." And I don't know whether Haiti ever did do that, because that was a note from MUNA 2 years ago when we had one of the resolutions focused on space. But that's the sort of nature of the note that is going around behind the scenes to and from different delegations. So each debating session opens with speeches from the sponsor, seconder, or first against for each resolution, and the debate order is published and displayed on screen during the debate so the delegation can see when they're due to address the Assembly. And they write a note to the Secretary-General to let them know their intention and where they're going to speak and how they're going to speak. Each delegation is limited to 2 minutes, except for the sponsor and first against, which are limited to 3 minutes at the opening of the debate. Following the end of the general debate, the sponsor of the resolution and the first against then have a right of reply. So we'll move along now to voting. For a resolution to be carried, it will require a simple majority, which is 50% plus 1. Each country has 1 vote and no country has a veto. When a question is put to the Assembly for a vote at the end of the debating period of time, which is 75 minutes, delegations raise their voting cards and the votes are counted and the Secretary-General announces the result. So we have points of order which are allowed by the Secretary-General only on an issue where it's felt that the rules have been broken. We have points of clarification and points of personal explanation. They're allowed by the Secretary-General and only on matters where a delegate claims to have been misquoted or misrepresented. And that's very tightly regulated by the Secretary-General, because we don't want to have too many interruptions to the debate because we run to a very tight time frame. And some delegations use that as a means of point scoring. No motions of dissent are accepted, and again, this allows the delegations to engage in debate, because whilst they're debating, they're earning points. And lastly, the Secretary-General may suspend the debate at any time. And the only time I've seen that happen is when we've had a district governor arrive at MUNA and he is welcomed to the General Assembly and introduced. So resolutions, I've mentioned resolutions a couple of times, and for clarification, here's a definition. A resolution is a specific statement or question up for debate. Resolutions usually appear as statements of policy, fact, or value. And a statement of policy involves an actor, local, national, or global, and with the power to decide a course of action. And I've just got an example of a resolution that we used in our recent MUNA, and the resolution was about the situation in the South China Sea. All the resolutions that we use are based on actual UN resolutions, but are adapted for MUNA. Some are very, very lengthy. And as you can see, the resolution is written in a specific format. Words such as preambulatory phrases such as affirming, acknowledging, concerned, having adopted, etc., and operative phrases such as accepts, urges, encourages, reminds, supports, etc., are used. The resolutions are chosen by members of the MUNA committee and focus on 4 areas: humanitarian, environmental, economic, and geopolitical issue. And so we can see that the situation in the South China Sea was the geopolitical issue. So together with the situation in the South China Sea, our other resolution topics were strengthening the role of the UN and in the promotion of democratization and enhancing periodic and genuine elections. That was a bit tricky, that one. Preventing and combating crimes that affect the environment. And the last one was the state of global food security. I've included this because it lists the countries for Rotary 9815 MUNA as well as the block alignments. The 28 UN member nations are approved by the committee and chosen in relation to the resolutions being debated. The 5 permanent members of the Security Council, China, Russian Federation, France, USA and UK, are always included, and other countries are chosen to balance the assembly in relation to wealth, religion, location and political stance. It's quite a tricky task to choose which UN members that you will have at MUNA. Countries are randomly allocated to ensure fairness rather than a first in, best dressed approach where the perceived good countries are snapped up quickly. So prior to MUNA, delegations are invited to propose or second a resolution or be the first or second speaker against a resolution. And these roles give the delegation more speaking time and the possibility to show leadership within their bloc by coordinating its approach to the debate. It is therefore important that delegations choose which resolutions they wish to propose, oppose, or second, and prepare their tactics and speech. And we really are relying on teachers at this point to provide some guidance to help the delegations choose their tactics. I really love this photo. It shows an informal block meeting in progress at last year's MUNA. Block meetings are not a huge focus in our form of MUNA due to time limitations, but we do have a block meeting and the delegations work out who they want to network with. And they are an integral part of the UN where committee members collaborate, the working papers are formed and leaders step into their roles. And of course, in both circumstances, it's an opportunity to network with delegates to to create alliances. So as I near the end of my presentation, I'd like to reflect on my first MUNA experience. So I attended my first MUNA experience in May 2012, and it was held on a very cold weekend at a camp called Forest Edge near Neerim East, nestled amongst rolling hills on the edge of State Forest, about 1.5 hours east of Melbourne. I was warmly welcomed by committee members and asked if I'd like to be a diplomatic courier. I had no idea what to do, but learnt quickly. I also reckon I walked about 20,000 steps over that weekend. What impressed me was the keenness of students involved and how well they represented their country and engaged with the whole MUNA concept. They were so well prepared and debated resolutions from their country's point of view, which is quite difficult for many students to do. 12 years later, I still see much enthusiasm amongst students, and I see many benefits for students to engage in an extracurricular activity which develops public speaking skills, teamwork and leadership skills, where they can engage in focused research, where they learn about diplomacy, international relations, the rule of law issues, current world issues, and learn about the structure of the United Nations organization. And they learn to respect cultural diversity and differences of race and religion. But most importantly, they realise how important it is to build bridges of goodwill for world peace. At all MUNAs, delegates are expected to show respect to fellow delegates and observe what we call the spirit of MUNA, which is a set of guidelines for participants. They are expected to act with dignity, decorum, and within the UN protocols at all times. And you know what? They do. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to share my passion for MUNA. And are there any questions?
Well, thank you very much, Di. They covered a lot of ground in that time. Appreciate that. People know that I give them time to think about questions, and I usually sort of jump in with an early question. So let me do that. Tell us something about the way that schools and teachers are resourced in the preparation, because you mentioned that, touched on it very briefly, but clearly there's a lot of work goes into preparation. So does Rotary help with that, or are the schools sort of said, go and work it out?
Well, that's a great question, Jeffrey. And yes, there are varying levels amongst teachers and Rotary clubs as to how much support is given to the delegations. Sometimes the delegations are able to run with it themselves with minimal support. They get a lot of support from probably family or other friends who are interested in it. Sometimes it's an extracurricular activity, and the teachers have so much on their plate these days that I'm always grateful for the ones who even do put time aside at lunchtimes usually to support the students. And I have some Rotary clubs who are amazing with inviting the delegations along to the club, and they prepare them. They have a round robin where they all ask questions and help them to prepare and focus on their country. And I have some other Rotary clubs who just pay the money and run. It's really pretty tricky. But then I have some really great clubs who go all the way from right at the outset when they have paid the registration right through to inviting the delegation back to their club, as well as the teacher. And they thank the teacher for the time spent in supporting the students. And it's become a really big thing to do that for some clubs. And so, yeah, it is a broad spectrum of support. Let me just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. I think, Terry, you were first.
Oh, well, didn't really want to be first, but anyway, thank you very much, Di, for the coverage. It's a new program to my life that I haven't come across. However, one of the things I did come across very early when I was involved in the Australian, it was the Junior Chamber of Commerce in those days, but the JCs, was machinery of government. That was a standard program throughout the world that every branch was, or chapter was expected to do something about. But the most important part that came out of it was learning parliamentary procedure. Now, I would expect everything that Muna does in the General Assembly and all that sort of thing, there must be some training going on beforehand on parliamentary procedure, because it's got a lot of quirks about it. And of course, you've got Robert's rules that apply in America, and here we've got the Westminster tradition in parliamentary procedure. Slight differences, and when you have an international gathering, and I've attended a few as representing Australia in the JCs, you have to adopt a common set of parliamentary rules. So how does that work in Muna?
Great question. Thank you, Terry. We are trying to achieve two things. We're introducing just a really brief introduction to the UN organisation and just one very specific component of it. And we're running a inter-school debating competition. So the way we debate is probably not how they debate in the UN. It's quite different from my readings that I've done. There are other Muna competitions that operate in schools, and they're embedded into the curriculum. I don't know whether you've heard of the EVIT competition or the UN OAA, but they run very specific programs which can be likened to the parliamentary processes of the UN, which I alluded to in my presentation, where they spend more time working in committee structures, they follow the vice president roles, they write the reports, they spend time writing the resolutions where they present it to the committee for review, and so the process is quite different, but it requires a much longer time frame than what we could possibly offer in our Muna competition. So ours has been modified for what the Rotary component wants and is able to do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jeffrey,
Yes,
I'm not sure if you have time, but I got an email from a couple of the students from last year, and I don't know if you want me to read that, because that actually puts it in a nutshell as to what the students experience.
Go ahead.
Have we got the time? Yep. Muna was an invaluable event for us. We were privileged to have been chosen as a sponsor for Resolution 3, which was combating and preventing environmental crimes, where we performed our absolute best. Now we're talking about 15 and 16-year-olds, and these youngsters were from Box Hill High, and lovely youngsters. We conducted extensive research weeks prior to Muna on the Solomon Islands, which was their allotted team. And that's random, isn't it?
Yep.
It just comes more or less out of a hat or something. Yep. On Solomon Island government, the current conditions of the resolutions and state member countries of the United Nations, therefore analysing issues from diverse cultural and political perspectives. So, they went into it very thoroughly. They didn't win any prizes, but obviously they enjoyed it. It was an incredibly entertaining and insightful experience. Delegates from corresponding countries can build alliances, and this is the blocks, can build alliances that are crucial for advancing our debates. Diplomatic notes were passed around as a form of communication during the debate, and we wrote about 200. Collaborating with other members to formulate steadfast arguments against our opposition. We observed a fierce and perceptive debate throughout the day, which enabled us to learn new skill sets from fellow delegates, such as the importance of confidence and tone along with strong evidence to support our arguments. Despite not receiving prizes, we did not leave with our hands empty. This experience has brought us numerous friendships along the way, in and out of the assembly. It's made us understand more about ongoing global issues, and we now look to that. And it's helped us refine our skills in public speaking and teamwork. And I must say, these girls were not skilled at all, but they really learnt a lot on the day from what they've told me. Ultimately, we truly enjoyed Muna and highly recommend it to students to enrich their growth. And I just thought that was a really insightful email that told us that, and these were shy young kids, you know, they really were. It was lovely. It's lovely to see how they've blossomed, and that they sent this, and they said at the bottom, of course, thank you to Rotary and everything, and to the Rotary Club that sponsored them. Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Glenys. Thanks. And Pat?
I just wanted to say that the German Teachers Association of Victoria runs a rather similar sort of program where students using German are encouraged are given a country in the United Nations, and then they have to discuss the issues involved. It's a similar sort of program, but it's all done for students learning German, and they have to present in German.
Excellent.
Di, is there a process of amendment associated with the proposals, or do they just debate them as they are?
Thanks, Jeffrey. That is the other aspect that sets us apart from the EVIT form of MUN. We haven't got time to do amendments, so the focus is we can do 4 resolutions in a day at 75 minutes each, and I'm the timekeeper there at the front of the stage working with the Secretary General, and we haven't got time to do amendments, and it can also distract from the debate. And the idea is to practice your debating skills and to deal with what the resolution is. And the ones who can break down the resolution and put it into that focus on peace and engage with the other delegations are the ones that are usually very successful. So there are ways of working and showing your skills without doing the amendments, but yeah, we haven't got time.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, look, thank you very much, Di. It's been, as Terry said, I'm sure we've all learned a lot about that. It might have been Glenys. It's a program that I was sort of vaguely aware of, but knew absolutely nothing about. So I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to hear more about it and to actually see some images of the way it works. And really appreciate you coming to be with us.